Welcome everyone to our annual meeting. Glad that you could join us on this wonderful day. Those of you who are at home, as I like to say, taking your part in the councils of the church. We offer salutations and respect to all present at this meeting and to all who will be affected by it. We brush off the chairs on which we sit at home and person here to make a clear space for a meeting of the minds. We brush off from our clothing any debris picked up along the way to clear our minds of extraneous matters. We wipe the tears from our eyes to acknowledge and forgive any hurts we have received. We take the lump out of our throats to let go of any sadness or disappointment. We take the tightness out of our chests to let go of any fear or resentment. And we acknowledge and pray for guidance to embrace Creator, Spirit, and all life. Amen. The sound is bad. I wonder if the camera's blocking it. The camera is blocking it. While we're waiting for a couple minutes here, my name's I haven't been appointed yet, but when it happens, I'll be clear. But I'm just asking that if you're making like a proposal, or just say your name first, so that I'm not like, who was that, Janet? You know, every 2 minutes. Thank you. Is the sound any better at home? Any better at all? Can you hear it? Is it still garbled?
No, they say.
Oh,
It's not there. It's garbled.
It's garbled, they say, yeah. Vibrate or,
How many people are saying that?
multiple people.
Not talk right into it. So does this still sound garbled? It's not quiet. It's just, is it distorted or is it almost like it could be a bad internet connection?
Distorted.
This is much better.
is there more than one mic picking things up?
Oh, I wonder.
It sounds like you have a bad.
Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Yeah, staticky.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are those without lobbyists. Amen.
Still sounding garbled?
Any better now?
Oh,
you hear me
yes.
Now.
Yes,
They say it's better? Oh, good. Or garbled.
Yes, better, yes.
It's good. Okay, so now I'm back to where I was standing. Can you still hear me? Is it still good?
Yes, it's still good.
Oh,
Is it-
good.
Is it good from back here?
But the volume needs to be up if you can.
Can you hear Mike talking? I'm farther.
Can you hear Mike, everybody, or not?
I can hear from Mike.
Okay, good.
That's him? Okay.
Okay.
We might be able to move that back a little
Sounds like we
bit.
got it.
So that, because it's really hard for the Zoom people to hear participants in the back, so. Maybe one more time for me, just make sure.
Thanks, Mike.
If people have questions, you can repeat it too.
Right.
It'll happen 12 of us.
Right, so the mic's been moved back a little further. Can you still hear the speaker up front? Any of those of you at home?
Yes, they can hear.
All right, I think we're good to go then. So we've had our opening prayer, and I would like to appoint Betsy Perna as a clerk of meeting. Betsy, do you accept the appointment? Got it. Got it. Thank you. And the next order of business is to approve the minutes from last year's meeting. They were printed in the annual report. Does anyone have any changes or suggestions or amendments to the minutes from last year? All right. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Bill. And do I have a second? Second. Sarah Jameson. All in favor of approving last year's minutes, raise your hand. Those at home, you can raise your hand as well. Thank you. And then up to the agenda.
I'm going to briefly reiterate a few highlights in the annual report. The annual report is in the epistle, and you can read all the really wonderful comments made by everyone. A significant amount of planning and your prayers resulted in an amazingly successful meeting with the Diocesan Standing Committee. I think we need to say that again and again and again. We're still in communication with the diocese, and you can be assured that the standing committee is still standing by. Our vestry had not participated in a mutual ministry review process before, and we found it very, very beneficial. What it is akin to a performance evaluation that focuses on the congregation as led by its rector. And you all will be pleased to know that the facilitators gave us very high marks. We all work well together, and we all respect one another. We have and will continue to implement some of its recommendations. We adapted the norms that were adopted by the Faith Partnership Committee into the vestry. Additionally, we will consider having some listening sessions to hear what's important to the emotional and spiritual life of the congregation. And speaking of listening, I want to reiterate gratitude for your participation in our preliminary budget discussion 2 weeks ago. It was really beneficial to all of us. And I also want to assure you that your church leadership is listening. Your vestry members represent you, and so we are eager to hear any concerns or suggestions that you have, and all of our contact information is in the directory, so please reach out. What we heard and have done is that we will provide a link to the vestry minutes in the epistle and on the website. We have renamed our contributions to the diocesan region as to what they are. What in the budget.
Say that again.
I can give this to you guys. Yeah.
Well, no, read it because there was a sound.
It was a
word.
Okay. We have renamed those contributions at your suggestion to the diocese and the region to be what they are, contributions to the diocese and the region, and not just broadly outreach. And we are including the designated outreach funds with the general fund budget so that you can see those statements every month also to know what's going on with outreach. An outreach fund does exist, albeit smallish at $4,000. It can be used for such things as Isaac dues, and we've used that and we'll take it on request. In response to the questions about all of our ministries, the epistle did highlight every single ministry last year. So look back at all of the ministries and you will be really amazed at everything that this church does. Oh, and also if you're curious about what the social and eco-justice ministry team does, please talk to Judy Matthews or Joan Stevenson or read the annual report because there is a lot of stuff they're doing. And in response to your desire, we heard for more focused direction on outreach. We know that any project needs one shepherd. in order for it to be successful. So if any of you are willing to shepherd an outreach committee, please let us. Or anything else you'd like to suggest. And with that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Gina. I'm just also highlighting some of the things that I wrote in the rector's report that's included in the annual report. And I wanted to say how glad we are to actually be back in person, some of us who are here in the flesh. And those of you who are at home, we're so glad you're with us. We've had a few more opportunities to be together 2 weeks ago at our budget meeting. We actually had our first potluck. We got to share food with one another. It's been a long time. I want to thank you for your flexibility and adaptability as we've pivoted, that word, to the demands of COVID of the last 3 years. I also wanted to make sure that I made a point to say how valuable our faith partnership is and how I'm just recognizing more and more. We do so much more together than we can do just by ourselves. Last year, we held 4 joint worship services. We also had midweek Advent and Lent services where we got to hear a lot of different music and voices and preaching and different prayers, which I think helps all of us better understand one another, enriches our own spiritual lives. Pastor Rick and I did some pulpit swaps, which people seem to enjoy, helping to get to know each of us a little bit better. We also jointly provided a robust vacation Bible school to our community and a bike to work day. And we shared 2 staff members. Some of you know this, some of you don't. Jennifer Reed, who is our Sunday school teacher, we share with Trinity. And we also share Claire Pickrell, who is an AV sound person, and she's there at Sunday mornings. We couldn't do that on our own. You know, we have the resources combined with Trinity to be able to staff those 2 positions. So I look forward to the deepening of our partnership in this coming year. And there are 2 things that I'm watching moving into this new year. We talked a little bit about on-ramps last time we met at the budget meeting. And what I mean by on-ramps are experiences or worship that we create at St. Paul's that might be an easier venue for you to consider inviting someone to. Sometimes people are suspicious of the church for good reason, unfortunately, and they're not going to walk through our doors without having an invitation from someone, and a way in sometimes can be what these on-ramps are unlike. So for example, last fall, we had
The
a food
audio's
truck and
on that
music
camera.
event,
That's
which
what's
was
doing
well
it.
attended. Thank you all for coming to that. The agenda was just to have fun, and we invited our local neighbors, and we had a really good turnout. In a few weeks, on February 18th, we're having a presentation by the local police officer that Betsy Perna has spearheaded.
That camera there.
Thank you, Betsy, for that. And
It's,
this is
the audio's
a
on for some
crime
reason.
prevention. And we're inviting neighbors. We've been advertising around town. I have flyers here somewhere. I think they're in there. We got them. This is
one for everybody.
yeah, this is something to invite people to that is not necessarily a worship service, but at least it gets them through the doors. He sees that. We're okay. Another on-ramp that is in the process, in the works, spearheaded by Lori, is we got a gift from the World Wisdoms Project when it goes down, because we're hosting some of their online material. And so with that gift, Lori is proposing that we put a bench on the property that overlooks Spring Creek with a QR code that people can use their phone to zoom in on. And it brings some information about God, the creator, and where they're sitting and what they're seeing, and an on-ramp. So on-ramps are what I'm paying special attention to. If you all have ideas of on-ramps that you would not be afraid to invite a friend to, please let us know. We hope to do at least 4 of these every year. The other thing that I'm paying close attention to and increasingly aware of is that we now have a new front door to the church. And that new front door is our digital presence. Church researchers tell us that almost everyone who attends our church for the first time has already been to our church online. They've checked us out on our webpage, or they've come to a worship service. This was true years ago, but it was especially accelerated by COVID. Unfortunately, we have a very gifted communications liaison in Lori, who has, in her velvet hammer way, insisted that we create worship that is engaging to those who are at home and participatory, not just something that they watch. And so I believe we have, in fact, I heard recently from someone who joined us, who said this service is much more participatory than any that I've been a part of before. And that is thanks to Lori and your efforts. So thank you so much. And we have an incredible AV and tech team, and Mike Whitney and Claire. We have now parishioners that join us on a regular basis from California, from Indiana, from Longmont, and from Superior. And they're regular participating, pledging members of our congregation. That would not have been possible before. So I expect that we will continue to improve and make those experiences, which also include our adult faith formation, which is held in this room, which, by the way, is another easy on-ramp to invite someone to participate. I know Holly Carroll is presenting next week on art and spirituality, and has invited a friend who knows you and trusts you to come and listen to her presentation. But you could also invite someone to participate from the comfort of their own home on a presentation on art and spirituality. So yet another on-ramp. So I want to thank you all for your willingness to be adaptable and flexible, which has prevented us from breaking over this past few years. I said that the world is changing rapidly and will continue to, but God's love does not change. It leads us, it fills us, and it guides us. So thank you so much for being on this journey. I'm delighted to be on the journey with you. And
Just keep moving it.
Yeah, well, let us know.
More
in
than
chat.
Now we need to move the camera though, because we got a big,
Oh, is it like in the way right?
yeah.
So I'm just gonna say a couple of words, mostly as I hand off the my part of leading at St. Paul's, and I wanted to maybe give a little bit of the courageous history as I see it from my perspective. Because as we create these new on-ramps, I'd like you to remember a few that you've had. The support for the LGBTQ community and through many events has been a major on-ramp, and that courage was important. When Tracy and I were looking for a place to be, and we had our little one, I'm sorry to hear Peter's voice isn't in here anymore. Maybe his mom was feeling uncomfortable. I can tell you though, I love the welcome that we received every time Ian inappropriately or appropriately said amen, very, very loud. And
He said yay.
yeah, a lot. And those were on-ramps too. Those are courageous on-ramps. And as we move to a new place, in that time, I want you all to know that as I was invited to come in to participate in the league, that was an important time for me as I was battling with my alcoholism. You guys all supported me in a way that you probably didn't know, but it was very important for me. And so, with that, don't forget how courageous you are in that this new challenge as you go into this new future, and you learn to partner with others and to show love and have that on-ramp of that partnership, that this is the place. This is the community. And I want to tell you one other thing, which is I'm going to walk away from this experience. And I'm going to get to talk about St. Paul's in all kinds of places, as I have. But now I'm going to do that in California. I'm going to talk about this courageous place that has done courageous things and done church in a different way and invites people into them. And so thank you all. I'm excited to see, I'm going to be in support. I'll be there. We'll be there from California, supporting you, rooting you on. But not just, maybe not here physically, but certainly in prayer and spirit. We're with you and we love you. And we look forward to seeing all the on-ramps, courageous on-ramps that you create through your partnership. So thank you all.
Everybody's favorite topic. Do you have anything that we can bring up on?
There she is.
That. Spectacular.
Which one do you want? The budget?
No, I think you had it.
I had it before.
Financial report. Yeah, that's, if you can move the people's names to actually in the middle between the titles and the numbers, they'll, that'll work too. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we have, so you start with the budget one, all right, hang on. You, oh no, that's fine.
I can make it smaller if you want. or-
No, it's, just scooch down so we can see, okay, the total revenue. Well, not too far. Up, up. There we go. That's good.
This one?
Yep. There we go. Okay,
There's no revenue there.
there is.
Where?
Pledge. Like total
Okay,
revenue.
thank you.
Total revenue, $259,000 is where we came in at the end of the year. In total, the budget for that was $249,000, so we came in $10,000 over budget, which is fantastic. Thank you to everyone contributing for that. If you take a look, what's good to note is, first of all, I want to make sure we can hear me, or that if they're saying, they making sure they can. What's good to know is the plate offerings, that line item 4,100 plate offerings, our actual was 21,000 and our budget was 14,000. Our pledges at the top came in just a little bit over budget, and we budgeted what was pledged, but we had a lot more plate offerings. Plate offerings is what we put in for people who are not pledging members, like maybe they're guests or they arrive mid-year in the church and they begin to give, but they haven't made a pledge per se. So to me, that shows kind of some growth in the church, in the financial numbers, and I think that's great. So we came in a little bit over budget on the gross profit. On the expenditures, can you scroll down just so that expenditures line is at the top? Oh, the expenditures section. I know, there we go. Look, there we go. This is just a kind of a more summary level of categories that we had, very similar to what we had when we talked about the budget a couple of weeks ago. I do have more details if anybody has questions about what's going into what numbers. Happy to answer those if they come. But if you look at our total mission and ministry, we came in under budget. The biggest chunk of that came from what's called outreach. That is where we put, right now, where we put, or we did put the diocesan amount and the Front Range region. We are going to be moving that when it starts with 2023, so that we have that a little bit separated based on what we heard from you guys in the meeting a couple weeks ago. I'm a little flustered for some reason. I apologize. Sometimes the songs at church really catch me. So we also reduced the amount that we ended up paying to the Front Range region compared to what we had initially budgeted for, and that was based on decisions by the vestry to scale that back because we were still running, we were ahead of budget, but our budget overall, if you scroll down to the bottom, Lori, our budget overall for last year, we had budgeted a loss of $44,000. So we only lost $21,000. So that's good that we came in ahead of budget, but you can't quite exactly celebrate it because we still came in at a loss. In any case, buildings and grounds and administration came in right on target with budget. And so we ended the year with that $21,000 loss in operating revenue. The designated restricted income and designated expenses are when people give to the locally Haiti or Habitat for Humanity. It goes into that designated income line that's below. Yep. And we'll do that. We'll look at the details in those in just a minute. And then when we send that check out to Habitat for Humanity or out to locally Haiti based on what people have designated it for, it goes to that designated restricted expense line. So that's why, as far as the operations of the church, that net operating revenue line is what we want to focus on, and that's where we want to be much closer to break even. So we cannot continue to operate for a long time, for very long, with $21,000 in losses in a year. So wanted to end there. The biggest, the designated restricted income negative of $675,000. That is the loss that we experience in the investments. The last few years, it's been a gain, and we don't want to keep moving the account between income and expense, depending upon if it's plus or minus. We flow all of it through that. It started as an income line, so we've left it in that income section, but that's why it's negative. So we had other activity in there. It just was dwarfed by the slaughter that was last year's markets, in case anybody has seen the retirement accounts in the last year. So the markets were down in general, I think 19% overall is what I looked up. So any questions on how we ended the year, the profit and loss for last year? Yes, Mark. Why is the investment shown that way? So Mark asked, why are the investments gain or losses shown under designated income? And that's because with the church here and the diocese has designated gains and losses related to the property sale as something that's designated to plant a new church. And I'm not, am I using the right terms for what was from the standing committee? And so that's designated for that purpose, so that all of the gains and losses are flowing through there.
It's to build and develop church.
To build and develop a church.
Not
Okay,
plant,
so
yeah.
that's slightly changed then over the last, from 2017.
Yeah.
But that's why, because
That's
it's,
what the resolution says.
okay, so that's what, since it's designated for that, that's why it's in designated. We can, which means we don't want to use it for salaries for the priests and for staff that work at the church and the usual operating stuff. So it's more conscious decisions about spending that money. We did spend, I think it was $30,000 or so on the columbarium this year, so that came out of those proceeds from the property sale. Did that answer your question, Mark? Okay. Any other questions? Anybody has one last one? All right, let's scroll down to the next page of this. Just make it so the assets are at the top. Perfect. So this is what in the for-profit world we call the balance sheet. In the nonprofit world, it's called statement of financial position, but it's the same data. It's the same information. They just have slightly different terms because nonprofits are not in for profits. So on the balance sheet, the way to think about the balance sheet is you have assets, liabilities, and equity. Assets are things that we own, OWN, things that belong to us. The liabilities are things that we owe, OWE, to other people or other entities. And if you take everything that belongs to us and you subtract out what we have to pay other people, you are left with what's called equity, or in the nonprofit world, net assets. So it's kind of considered the worth of the church over the history that we've been around. The financial worth, excuse me, financial worth of that. You get a numbers person in this job, that's what you get. To be reminded that it's numbers, so yes. Anyways, the assets that we own, we've got a couple of different cash accounts at the bank. What you see here too is what we have at the Colorado Episcopal Foundation is where we've got two funds there. One called a short-term fund, which is invested more conservatively, say, because we told them we may need it in 1 to 2 years. The medium-term fund is, we said we'll need in maybe 4 or more years. We'll want to pull cash out of that. And so they have different investment strategies for those two different types of funds. And just as a note, we have the Kano and Bunyan endowments as well, and those are invested in the same way that that medium-term fund is. But we are tracking it separately from an accounting perspective. So here's where you see what the value of that portfolio is with all of our cash, what we call current assets, which means we can use them and liquidate them in less than 1 year. That's the term current, and from an accounting perspective is $3.9 million, almost $4 million. Any questions on that? I know investments are kind of a big black box to a lot of folks. I wanted to see if anybody has any questions on the investments at all. It's time. Anything online? Any shots online?
Anybody online, Mike, can you see?
Any questions online? We can watch that just because she's got the presentation up. Correct, she can't. We can't see the chat.
That looks okay.
Ian is doing great, it's clear. No, I'm good.
Okay, good. We can hear me too. Total liabilities, the current liabilities we have, most of that's just some credit card bills. We have some, sometimes some payroll taxes that end up that haven't been contributed or haven't been sent to the government yet. They go the month right after. So there's just a little bit of those liabilities, general bills and things. We did accrue for, there was a decision made by the vestry late at the end of last year or early this year about paying the fourth quarter of contribution to the diocese and to Front Range. They made a decision on that. And so we recorded that expense in last year. So you saw it on the profit and loss statement, but it was not paid out in cash by December 31st. So that's sitting in there as a liability. That leaves us with our total equity section. So again, kind of the net financial value of the church. And it's the stuff we can measure, right? It's harder to measure the other stuff. But really, I love it. I've been here for a really long time. What you see in equity, so one of the things we do with nonprofits is we have what's called restricted assets, or restricted net assets, and we have unrestricted net assets. So if you think about it, the restriction.
Could you move that down so we can see that?
Oh, sorry, scroll down. Yes, thank you, John. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. For the temporarily restricted net assets are items where the biggest piece in here is the sale from the church property. That's the bulk of that $3.9 million you see in there. And it still also includes the Locally Haiti, the Habitat for Humanity, anything else that people give that has a specific purpose to be used on. It sits in this temporarily restricted net assets until we spend it on that purpose. So we can't call it spent, and it won't leave this area until we've exhausted it and spent it and sent it out to where it needs to go. So that will always be a large number as long as we have those investments, and that endowment is kept for restricted for, I'm gonna get the words wrong again. Gotta change them for the new
Building a new church.
building.
Development and building of a new church.
Development and building of a new church. So because it's restricted to that, that's where that's sitting. The unrestricted net assets, you'll see there's an item that's called fixed assets. We can probably consolidate that into the unrestricted net assets at this point, but what I want to draw your attention to is if you add the 3 bottom rows, or if you can point for the unrestricted net assets, fixed assets, the 29,000, the 790,000, and the negative 749. These right here, these bottom 3, if you add them all together, we net to a total of $71,000 of unrestricted net assets. we can't, the fact that they're shown separately, don't get caught up in that. That's a QuickBooks thing that we can't get them to sum it all together. So that's what you get an interpretation from somebody like me. When you look next year, so that net revenue line, since that's the total loss, including all of the investment activity, that once we start showing you financials for January, that will get lumped and bumped into that unrestricted net assets number, and you'll be able to see it a little bit more clearly starting January 1st, 2023. So what I wanted to highlight is the total unrestricted net assets is $71,000. So what that means is, and what the way we would look at this in the for-profit world, which I know we're not, but it's important to understand this from a cash flow perspective. This 71,000 is kind of the historical financial profits of the church that have been counted up over time and added up over time since the inception of the church. And each time we have a loss in our net profitability, we have a net loss on our income statement, we eat away at that net asset and we reduce it. So that $71,000 is $71,140 to net those together. That is basically, if we were to continue on the same spending pattern and have a net loss of $20,000 each year, it means we'd have 3 years before we have a really big fat problem, right? So if we have about $20,000 of loss each year, 20, 40, 60 gets us to $60,000. We've just about exhausted that entire 71,000. So as a financial professional, I would say you have 3 years of a runway before we have a big problem. This unrestricted net assets does not include the gain or losses that come from the investments, because that's in a temporarily restricted category. It looks a little bit weird now because it's got the $749,000 there. But again, that's part of the accounting that we have to do to play with QuickBooks. QuickBooks was not designed for nonprofits. So I've had to build workarounds to get it to work like a nonprofit set of financial statements should. So it'll be a little bit more clear then. Right now, it looks like it's lumped in, but that unrestricted net assets of $790,000 is what it's getting pushed against in January 1st. So all of that to be said, I just want people to understand, and I'm going to be the downer, the Debbie Downer of the day, because I just want everybody to be conscious of what that is. That we can't continue to have a net loss for very long. Having a little bit, couple $1,000s here and there, we can do that a lot longer, right? Than we can how we ended up this last year. So we have to be really conscious about that. And the new budget that the vestry approved. Well, first of all, I'll pause. I'll have something more to say about that, but I want to pause. Does anybody have any questions on the liabilities in the equity section? Yes, Greg.
I'm sorry, but I didn't, where is the number 71,000?
If you add together the 29,883 and the 790,794 and the negative 749,537, that's where you get to the 71,140. It's not on here by itself, again, because we've got to redneck our way around getting it to show it properly. So you can't, I guess I'll always have a job then, right? Professionally. Question? That now, Greg?
It looks like it's
I do.
71,000 or is it 700?
I have a
No,
question.
71,000.
Could you say those numbers again, just for me?
Sure, so
I don't
it's,
need to write it down.
it's 29,883.
Mhm.
And somebody can check me on the calculator, I did it the other day, but 29,883 plus the 790,794 minus the 749,537, and I got 71,140. That's, you have to double check it, okay.
Paul has a question.
Yes,
Paul,
Genevieve,
go ahead. Let's see if we can hear you.
okay, this is Paul Kelly online. Genevieve, can you hear me?
yes,
Okay, thank you. Looking at the temporarily restricted net assets, so that's a pretty big number. And you mentioned, and this may be more of a strategic question for Alicia, but is there an active plan to build a new church? Or do you continue, is the intent to stay with the Faith Partnership and share the building the current?
Yeah, Paul, there is not an intention right now to build a new church. We intend to stay in our partnership right where we are.
Okay. All right, so what eventually will happen with that money then?
That's kind of the $3 million question. John's gonna come up and speak to that a little bit.
So in a partnership, okay, in a partnership, we're gonna have to figure that out. So I think we've gone through a lot of activities over the years and we've done some brainstorming. Like having maybe some more space here for us to worship at the same time. But we've got to get through that partnership activity before we would decide on that and kind of land on that. And we've got some work on the partnership to do. There's work to do there. And so I think that's really important is we're not in a rush to spend that much money. We don't have to because of a relationship with the standing committee as well. We can spend our time. And I think that's actually really important for us. That as we're working through this partnership and this new way to be together, that's what we're really trying to do is have the patience to determine where that all lands. So that's good work we've done over the last year in particular under Jan's leadership is really getting alignment with the standing committee. Like we don't have to rush. We're working on this partnership. The money's not going anywhere. Because that's the other thing that, you know, we want to be careful of is that this stays with us as we want to invest in our future, right? Okay, so that's, I think, really important is not to feel like we have to rush also. I think the challenge is we have a sense of urgency. I think people have that feeling. And so I can respect that that's like, well, let's hurry up and do something with that. What do we want to do? And I think that is going to come with getting a closer relationship with our partners and working together through that, right? So those were some of the listening sessions this year.
A quick follow-up question, if you don't mind. Has the diocese placed any restrictions on us around that money? Or are they laying claim to any of it?
No.
You want to take that?
Yeah, the communications, the written communications we have, pardon me. Okay, the communications from the diocese. The resolution that was passed says very clearly that it is for the development and building of a new church. The next communication that we have is a letter stating that that money belongs to St. Paul's. So I hope that answers your question.
And I'll make one other comment. We then talked with two bishops who were very clear about this. And we've now talked to the standing committee. So I think to be a little more like, it's our money. Like, don't worry about it. Is it sort of the important takeaway? But we got to work through this partnership because we don't want it just sitting there forever because we have something special to share. And so if we can work through that, then there'll be more goodness on the other side, right? You know, so.
Right, yes. We, John and I, John puts the word build in quotes, and I put the term church in quotes because
Right.
really what is church but service of our neighbors?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The last 2 years of this annual meeting, we talked about this. And we've said within the next 6 months, we're going to start doing something. And we haven't. So are we working with the partnership to focus on that?
Yes, and actually, the vision team, as the vision team concluded its work, it had in mind the next team would be the planning team. And so the 3 congregations have submitted what they would feel that a charge for that planning team would be. And we are now going to just look at what is the charge for the planning team. So that is the next step.
Thank you.
And I think it's an important point that you're making here, John, is maybe we gotta be careful in timelines. Because I'll cop to the fact that I thought the vision team was gonna take 6 months, and it was 2 years later that we got through that novel, and it was not easy, but it was really good work. And now we're at there's a new leadership at Trinity, we're working through that, there's still a lot of commitment, but it's taking a lot longer than we all expect or want, I guess is the important point, right?
And we had talked about having more listening sessions. And the timelines that you're comfortable with and that I'm comfortable with may be different from the timelines that Pete and Lynn are comfortable with, and we need to listen to all of you. So that is one of our goals, that we will have listening sessions and just hear what you all have to say about that. Hear, John, what you have to say, and hear what others have to say.
Maybe one other thing to say is we're keep moving forward on things with the partnership to make it better here, right? I mean, I love the idea of the food trucks and the things that are happening. I mean, there's real activity, real things that are happening, right? But it's taking longer than we want. All right, we all agree. And actually, part of that too is, just to go back to the history, is we've been on this journey even longer, right? I know, I feel it, yeah. And we're like further along on that than, our partners are. So it's tough. So just a lot of appreciation for patience and the feedback. So.
Thank you.
Any other
I have a
questions?
question.
Yes.
I appreciate all that's been done and is being done with the partnership. I also appreciate the fact that we're in sort of that transition still. And I just want to go back to the investment of our portfolio, the investments that we received when we sold our old place. And one of the things I heard, Genevieve, when you gave the report, was that the church is not receiving any of the income. The income is being invested. And of course, which was just what I didn't want to hear last year, where there was a dramatic drop, I think, in our assets, the investment portfolios. And I'm very disappointed in that. Not everybody, in the US probably also had some of that. But here's what my thinking is. We should be taking that income and it should be used for what our church determines is the best use at the time. It will not be lost in a portfolio or in a stock market, bond market disruption, so to speak. I think that money can be put to use to keeping us in line, so we aren't feeling threatened that we're getting closer and closer to the cliff. It should be used and may be used however St. Paul's wishes that income. And it may be that it is something that we can put towards, again, coming to the place where there is a harmony in the relationship with our other partners here at 301. So I would like to see that income being used. It's not a sin to use the income. The principal, in theory, will continue to grow if we have good managers who are astute as to what's happening in the economy. But I think this year in particular, where we have high interest rates, people are beginning to lose their jobs, and we're going to all be more vulnerable, I think, this year. So I would ask, can that be a subject of discussion from the investment group, that we take the income and let the principal remain to be reinvested or invested as chosen by the foundation?
So yes, we can talk about that. A couple weeks ago, when we met about the budget, I talked about the concept of total return that includes dividends and interest income and gains and losses from just the value of the stock going up and down. if we decide to take what's called distributions and take cash out the interest and dividends, that means we're gonna see in years where the value of the securities, the stocks go lower, we're gonna see a bigger number on the bottom. So if you have a total return and it's, say minus 20%, I think is what we ended up with last year. If we got 1% in dividends, if we took that cash out, we would have shown 21% loss in our numbers. So there's positives and negatives to both sides. The investment committee, when they first talked about this, was a push to not have the church ongoing operating budget rely on investment income to keep the church up. And that's why we've left everything reinvested with dividends and interest, is because we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet with pledges and plate income that comes in the door and not rely on the investment income to help us stand on our feet. So, but yes, we can talk about that. Terry, thanks. Mark?
We got a follow-on question for that. With the way that that's designated through the standing, is that even an option? Yes.
I think
Yeah.
Jan can keep to,
Can
but I
you-
think they've restricted the principal, at least initially, they restricted the principal of it and not the gain loss. However, at this point, we have a situation where the principal is higher than the actual market value that's there right now. And actually, if you scroll, we can see that a little bit better, Lori, if you scroll down more. So at the bottom of this page. So this is the designated giving details. This 3.9 million we see at the bottom of here is the same number that we saw as temporarily restricted net assets. This is the detail of what makes up that 3.9 million. And if you look in here, the property transition net proceeds are about $4.1 million. That's the principal of that's in there. The interest income above it that is that minus 360,000. So we've been tracking that principal and interest separately. And so the principal is at $4,091,000. And the actual value of, I'm gonna have to do some fast math here. The actual value of our ECF funds is about 3.6 million. So right now, the principal is restricted, but guess what? We've got less less money right now in the investments than what the principal is worth. So you could say we owe money to the principal right now because of how that's tracked. So thanks for highlighting that, Mark. Did that answer your question? Sure. Yes, Mike.
Mike Warner, I tend to agree with Terry. The definition of developing and building a new church has changed over the last 5 years. In 2017, we were talking about building a building. Since we've come into the faith partnership, growing the church is more with serving the world outside our doors.
Mhm.
And that's where I think we can use some of the interest and dividends that come off of our investment. Yes, the investment principal is going to go up and down as the market changes. 2 years ago, we made a lot of money on the market because the market was much higher than it is right now. 2 years from now, I think we're going to be back in a positive trend for the market, as long as we don't pull out, $1 million to build something that the 2017 definition of the new church is.
This is why I think we will welcome having listening sessions. So both Terry, Mike, Mark, everyone has an opportunity to express how they feel about this. So yes, listening sessions you will see in your future.
Thank you.
We need to move on, I'm getting a pain. So the last thing I want to do, and I'll stay after for a little bit, if anybody has any questions in more detail, if you want to talk about it, that's fine. If you can flip to the budget file now. Okay, so just gonna highlight something specifically here for you guys. We talked in detail about the budget a couple weeks ago. What I want to share with you is the budget that the vestry passed had which is the first one, the one that we talked about 2 weeks ago. the one that the vestry passed had $15,000 in that plate offerings number. That's a little bit more than we had in 2022, which is about $14,000. And with that and building the budget, they ended up with passing the budget with a net operating loss of $19,767. So like in 2022, it's a little weird to say we're ahead of budget. Hey, we lost $20,000. So I wanted to change that this year and say, you know, what we really need to be shooting for and striving for is that break even. Let's get to zero. Let's get up from the negative and get up to a zero. So this budget, what I want to show on our financials and in the monthly financials that we're going to start reporting out to you guys in the epistle is something that's going to cause us to get to that break even zero net profit. And what that means is our total plate offerings coming in the door have to be $41,094, not just $15,000. Now you might be thinking 15,000 plus 20,000 is not 41,000, Janine. Why is that? That's because our donation to the diocese, to the Front Range, and to Trinity for Property are based on a percentage of plate and pledge. So as we increase our pledge and plate, we have to give a little bit of that away. So I think the rough estimate was about 25% that we're giving away between those three areas. 23.5% giving away to those areas. So we've got to get more in plate income to actually get to that net zero. So I want to put in our budget to track from a financial perspective and to report to you guys a number of $41,000 because that's what we need to achieve. I don't want us to go, oh, we're right on budget, we're great, we're doing great, but we're still at a loss of 20,000. It's weird. So that's why I want to increase that top number so we get to a zero number. And I think that's just a better picture of what we all need to be working towards. How many people do we need to invite to church? How many people do we need to welcome into this great community that we have here? Does anybody have any questions about how to change that number and why?
So it's an aspirational number. It's not a.
It's a gosh darn it, we need to get there, or we've got less than 3 years before we have a really big fat problem.
That's what it is.
That's what a budget is.
That's what a budget is.
A budget is an aspiration, right? That's all a budget is.
Are you taking other questions on the budget or you got more to say?
That's all I think I needed to say. I'll have to look to Jan and we should ask if I'm allowed to take questions now. Any more questions? Okay, John, yes.
My question is on the outreach. Thank you for breaking out the diocese and Front Range region, but that makes social justice program zero. Is that something we're going to work on?
So that was something, oh. Go to whatever she says is the next slide. Something she's got, I think it's not what I've had. So that's, okay, so that's part of what I showed before. So we're putting it all through that restricted income. Remember how I talked about that restricted income? So what we want to do is we want to keep the pledges and the plate offerings coming to this church for operations of the church because we really need it right now. So if people want to give separately to outside things like locally Haiti, like Habitat for Humanity, maybe you can zoom in on that PDF, Lori, so you can see a little bit more. To put that through designated income. When it goes through designated giving, those lines, we don't have to pay out the 10, it doesn't get calculated in the 10% that goes to the diocese, the 13% that goes to Trinity. Since it's coming in and going right back out, we actually probably should be shifting how we give to social justice issues and focus instead on doing that through designated income.
Which we've been doing for a while now, like Haiti was always there, right? A lot of our outreach
Yes.
was there. It's just maybe it's.
The last little bit.
Now we gotta really just put it all there, right?
Right.
And that's the same thing we did with Habitat for Humanity.
Correct.
And Habitat's there.
And Isaac and everything, yep.
Yeah.
Well, Isaac is not there.
But
Isaac
we
has
can
been
put
a
it there,
line
so when he
item.
gives money, we can give that to Isaac.
Right.
So that's the other thing.
So that's how we will handle that outreach.
Thank you.
Any other questions here on, oh, yes, Jody?
If we have in-kind donations, I realize it's another step that has to be done, but if I fill out a form and my in-kind donation is the cost of the supplies for altar bread, and I just give those now, they're not in any way in part of the budget or the spending. But a lot of us will do those kind of things. If we created a way for that to be tracked, how would that not make a difference? A small difference, mind you, but even a 1% difference would make a difference, because a lot of us probably do that and we haven't done it. It does require me filling out the form and getting it in, and well, say yourself, whatever, someone kind of tracking it. But I know that we all do that.
Yes, and a few years ago, when I was treasurer, I actually pushed to have everybody, for all those things that we do kind of donate to the church, I pushed to have everybody fill out a reimbursement form so we could get the expenses recognized and then say, no need to send me a check back. There is a way you can account for that. It does wash out to zero. So you record the revenue that's of the value of what somebody gave, and you record the expense of what the same dollar value of what they gave. So we can start reporting that. That helps us see what the actual cost is to run the church, where some of that has been hidden over time. I think we've done a lot better at that, but if you want to turn something in, just be clear on that, on the form that you're donating.
Is there a form
supplies
that
or-
exists there right now?
It probably is just a check reimbursement form, and then you would
Yes.
note and say, don't send me a payment.
Okay,
So
thank
don't have
you.
a separate,
That's
I
fine.
don't know that we need to have, I
No,
can set
I-
one up if we need one.
I hear you. I'm just trying to make sure that
Yes.
everybody else.
Yes, and that would probably be something we could put it through the other income line, since it's donated in kind. I don't think we would need to take the percentage to send to
Right.
the diocese and,
Because it would go
Trinity,
to, it has a specific target, like you're designated, right?
it's like designated, but I think the percentages are based on pledge and plate.
Mhm.
invoices.
Right, that's what I'm
So
saying.
would not
It
be
wouldn't
part of
go
that.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure. Anything else in the room or online?
That's-
The check reimbursement form, are you actually having to use a check to use that form?
No, it's a form that we use if somebody does want payment back.
Okay.
So it's just an expense reimbursement form, and then you just write a note on it additionally for wealth that says, I'm donating this, don't send me a check payment.
Jules, you about to get mama sick.
Hey, Trace,
Gotcha.
we can hear you.
Your lipstick.
Sorry, everyone.
Hi, Tracy.
So yeah, it would be the same form, and then wealth can just scan that to the bookkeeper and she'll record it.
Thank
That's actually a small problem that we have with the checking account. We do some reimbursements and we send a check to somebody for $24 and they never cash it. And then 90 days later, I get a frantic message from Canvas Credit Union saying, this check is going to be voided in 2 days.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is if you didn't expect to get a check back, then please tell us at least that you're not intending to be repaid, because then we can get the accounting taken care of and get that check removed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Next
Next is vestry elections.
is vestry elections.
You don't have to approve the budget, then approve, right?
Yes.
Vestry actually is the one also that approves the budget, not the annual meeting.
Yahoo.
Okay, for the vestry elections, everybody who's at home also votes, and I'm gonna let Lori explain what she set up for that. And then as far as here goes, you're just gonna raise your hands when I ask you to do that. So Lori.
Come up here so they can hear the microphone.
Lori's trapped, she's on her way.
So now here, okay, so what you see on your screen is your ballot. And as the folks here in the room are going to be voting, they'll be voting one at a time for people. But you can vote all at once, and then we will check the totals on the ballots all at once. So you go ahead and do that, and then folks here in the room will vote. Does that make sense? If there are any questions, let me know.
And then, so the candidates are Jan Friedland for senior warden, a 1-year term, Mark Donovan for junior warden, a 1-year term. They are both eligible, everybody each junior and senior warden can serve for 3 years, but they do need to be reelected each year. And then Raven Agape and Pony Davis are running for 3-year terms. Just Malay. Pony, thank you. And then there's a correction. Holly is running for a 2-year term. She'll be filling in Monica's term. So that's just one correction. So I'm going to start with senior warden, and Felicia, would you like to nominate the senior warden officially?
Yes, officially like to nominate Jan Freeland as senior warden.
And Jan, do you accept?
Yes.
All in favor of electing Jan, please raise your hands. And if you're online, please vote. Okay, in room, it passes.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody here. Let's see.
You need to tell people to go ahead and submit they probably have to vote all of them at once online and then submit their answers before it shows up. for you.
That's right. You have to go do all of the voting now and then,
Okay, let's try this. So the ballot online, we're gonna vote in the room, and you can vote along with us, and then at the very end, everybody at home vote, because I'm assuming there are not gonna be any dissent.
Hit the submit button at the end.
Hit the submit button when all the voting's over. Okay,
Okay.
and Felicia, do you have a nominee for junior warden?
Yes, I would like to nominate Mark Donovan as junior warden for a 1-year term.
And Mark, do you accept? Okay, everybody in the room who's in favor of Mark, please raise your hand. And that passed. Everybody at home, please vote. And then we'll move on to the 3-year terms for Raven and for Pony. And if we could just do this by acclamation. No, wait, sorry.
Together, you mean the slate?
As slate, yes. I want to back up. Are there any nominations from the floor for vestry members? Or are there any nominations from home for vestry members? Anything in the notes? Okay. Okay. What? All right, so got Raven and Pony for a 3-year term and Holly for a 2-year term. And can we just vote for the whole slate?
Yeah, move nominations be closed.
Thank you, Jim.
I second that.
And Pete seconds that. Thank you, Pete. Okay, now can we vote for the whole slate of, okay, everybody in favor of voting for all 3 people, please raise your hands. And that passes. And everybody at home, if you can vote for the 3 vestry members, please, and then submit your poll. Okay, Lori, do you think we have a?
It should be showing up, shouldn't it?
it should be showing up. Yeah, I don't see why it's not here.
Do you have to end the poll for it to show up?
Let me see.
I don't know if you can open it back up if you end it. I don't know.
What was that like?
Ah, there you go. Show results.
Okay.
Does it say how many people submitted?
It says 0%, so I don't understand what's going on here.
There's three in the chat that said they've submitted all those.
I know.
My ballot just came back up. I had voted and submitted. And now I get a ballot that says, oh, it's shared by the host. 100% answered.
Lori can't see it, but other people.
I can't see it, but you can. 100% answered.
Okay, Robert, would you
And
help?
it says 100% answered.
There you go.
I don't know what I voted no on.
Yep, here we
Oh,
go.
it says I voted no on Holly, but I didn't. And now it says,
Okay. Yes.
I don't know what that no 0% voted no. There, now I'm reading it more correctly.
Okay.
On number 3, Pony Davis, 100%. Wait a minute. Yes,
Okay, we got it,
We've
Rhoda.
got it.
you got it. Okay.
Yes, so it, from people voting for home, from home. It was also unanimous on all of the candidates.
Yeah.
So that concludes the elections. Thank you very much. Thank you
all for staying. The last piece of business is to thank people who have retired from ministries. And the first person we're going to thank is Joe Bietti, which I think Joe is online. Joe has coordinated the food bank ministry and volunteers that have gone for many years. And we thank you, Joe, for your service to that important ministry. And fortunately, Joe Lawrence later this week, and I will take a card and give to Joe and Lawrence. And Becky has stepped in for that important ministry. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you all. It's been a privilege.
And I'd like to thank the retiring vestry members. Kathleen Batterton served as a vestry member at large. Mary Jean Courier served as a vestry member at large, and Monica Foster as well served. And I have just a little something for you. Not least, John. John, you know, has served this congregation in ways that only John could do. He talked about how it was fun negotiating for the sale of the building. Who would say that John really was?
Not me.
It was God. It was God's money he was having fun with negotiating for, and got almost double from the initial offer is what I heard. John, thank you for asking the right questions at the right time, which help us move forward and help us see God in the midst of us when sometimes we were getting to know before you asked the right question. So John, we have some gifts for you. One of the gifts is just a remembrance.
Lower it down a little, would you?
Yeah.
There, hold it right there for a sec. Thank
This is
you.
an eagle in flight, soaring, and he's looking straight at you in flight.
And he's sideways. It's like,
And he's sideways. So John, here's the card that goes with. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for your focus, for your agility, and your strength. There you are reflected in this photo, serving St. Paul's and the Holy Spirit. You will continue to inspire us.
a piece of art, so you remember. Phil Collins, of course.
That's great.
And we send that home. And we will pay for shipping. So you don't have to take these on the plane.
Thank you.
But these also are cards that people have filled out for you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Is Tracy still online?
We're lipstick.
She was saying, Julia, you're getting me sick because Julian's got a little cold, and so that's what she was saying.
Is Tracy still
I don't
on?
see her.
You don't see her, okay.
I'm still online.
Tracy.
Oh, she's there. Okay,
I
good.
just want to
Yeah.
say that we know John would not do what he does without you. And
Amen.
your hammer.
Amen. Thank you all. I appreciate you all. I look forward to seeing what you do.
Well, with that, I'd like to close us with a dismissal. God of grace, thanks for another year of ministry. We praise your name for being with us, traveling with us along this road. We ask your blessing upon our future, that we might continue to be courageous with your money, with your gifts, with the time and talent that you've gifted all of us with, that we might share it abundantly and not have a mindset of scarcity. Go with us from this place and give us your grace and all of this we pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Oh, John wants to remind everyone to wear their name tags. We have some newcomers who are coming and wanting to know people's names. So I'll make that announcement next Sunday before worship as well. So thank you all for wearing your name tags.